people like to sensationalize things. And for me, I'm like, my dog is my favorite thing on Earth, on this planet. And there's something called anthropomorphizing. It's like, it's basically attributing human gestures and humanness to dogs. You know, like when a dog is panting, right? Like they have their mouth open and they have their mouth wide open, their tongue out. People think that they like equate that to smiling. Or like people hugging dogs. They're like, oh, this dog loves to be hugged. The thing is, a dog's not enjoying that. Because to a dog, when you hug them, like when you think about other dogs and they jump up on another dog and they wrap their arms around them, that is dominating the other dog. That's like the dog saying like, hey, in very I don't want to like, they're just, you know, that's just a very rude gesture. But obviously some dogs, their temperament is so mild, they've been so desensitized to things, right? But like humans, we're like, oh, he loves to be hugged. It's like, no, it's just the dog. The dog's not having a good time. The dog is just knows that, you know, like there are consequences if he or she doesn't move. I mean, you know, like if he or she like nips back and fights back or whatever. But if the dog's not socialized, or the dog is, you know, doesn't enjoy being dominated, then he's gonna fight back. And people are like, oh, this is just a mean dog. And it's not. It's just you don't understand. And it's because you're anthropomorphizing the dog. So it's like people put their own stories based off of their perspective and their expectations and their life on everything like that. Not just dogs, everything in life. And they're only seeing it from their perspective. So for instance, we'll go to like pyramids. People will look at like the pyramids in different countries, right? Like in Egypt and in Mexico, and they'll be like, oh, these pyramids were like created by aliens. There's no way they all line up with this, whatever. You know, they say all these things because they love that story. They love the story that something supernatural happened to create these giant structures. They don't realize that throughout time there have been like many structures, but they haven't survived. And that's because the pyramid shape is the most solid building shape, you know, that we know of, because it lasts, and it's lasted forever. But since the pyramids were built, there were like, you know, billions and billions of different other building structures that were built that were probably just as big. They just didn't last the test of time because, you know, earthquake hits, rain hits. You know, think about like all the buildings we have. Think about like Detroit, right? Detroit's like a city where like all of the homes were abandoned. How long is it going to take for those homes to all disintegrate? Maybe 10,000 years or less? Or like maybe even less than that, because we're going to clear them out. We're going to turn them into shopping malls and parking lots, right? Or they'll be gentrified, and then all of a sudden there's a new neighborhoods and new homes and all that. And they chase all the people out that they don't want in there just based off the pay, based off how much they're charging for the homes. But people like to think of these things like they're like, oh, these, and then they're like, oh, well, with these pyramids, people are, you know, like there's no way that those humans could have figured these things out. And it's not like that. The thing is humans, there have always been geniuses in humans, like in humanity, like in our groups. There have always been genius people that were way smarter. Like when we think of geniuses, we think of like Nikola Tesla, we think of Einstein, we think of these characters or these, these people. Most of them, I'm not going to get into this, but most of them are selected because of certain attributes that, that want to be, there's an agenda, and if you know, but basically, like, I'm going to just say that genius comes in all colors. Genius comes in all genders, all everything. So like people just, they like to sensationalize things. So they take away credit too. They take credit away from people who are genius back in the day, and like even now, people get silenced. Think about all the people who have created engines, right? That ran on water. They just disappeared. There's some validity to that because these big companies, these big oil companies, they don't want that to exist. Because if it's just like vaccines and those companies that create vaccines. It's like, so there's all these things, and people like to, the main thing is like people like to sensationalize things. They like to turn things into stories based off their perspective and their own lives. They're looking at it from like a tiny little speck. They're not looking at it from like the grand picture. There have always been genius people. And that's where I've been thinking about, my own, like, and in the last episode, I was talking to you guys about trauma, right? I was talking about things that I'm dealing with, things that I'm working on within my own self. And I do sensationalize things sometimes, right? Like I think about like, oh, well, where did this come from? Maybe it's because of this. No, it's because of my decision making. The reason why certain things happened in my life is because I made, the mistakes, and I had to learn off those mistakes. And it's okay that I made mistakes, and it's okay that I, did all these things. And that's part of the trauma or part of the healing process is coming to terms with reality and coming to terms with the way things are, and understanding things and finding my own way in this life, in this experience, this very short experience. And also enjoying it, right? So when people like love stories, right? They attach themselves to the greatest stories that they hear, and they're just like, oh, these are beautiful stories. Someone created them. There's a reason why things are created. Things don't just like get created for no reason. And one of those things, in my opinion, is just one of the, to me, the biggest cancer in this experience, this human experience, is religion. Biggest cancer. Second, politics. And both of these things have to do with communities. Both of these things, in my opinion, were built off sensationalism. People want stories. They want something that gives them a predictable outcome, right? People want to say, you know what? If I do these things, then I'm going to heaven. I'm going to be rewarded at the end of this if I be this way. Because that's a story and it's predictable for them. They don't want to go into the universe, into this human experience, and experience it for really what it is. Because that's scary. They don't know what's ahead of them. They only know what's behind. And the thing is like everything that's behind us is behind us. It's, like if we just hold on to those things that are behind us, then guess what? We never really move forward because we're dragging our feet. I was watching TikTok. There's this beautiful like TikTok about this monk, and he was on a boat, and he's like, you are like this boat, and the waves, those are all things that happened in the past. Even as we're walking, like, you see how this, like, in Minecraft, and you see how this like grass is kind of dull. At one point it was pure green. We were in a place in the, I don't know what they call these things now, biodome or whatever they're called. Now we're on sand. But like, those things were in the past. But we can remember those things. We can vividly remember those things, and we can say, like those things happened. And the further the waves go away, the least, or we forget details, but we sensationalize those things in our head, and we're like, that was back there was the best part of this biodome, or the best part of Minecraft. Like we come up with these stories in our head, and we're like, that's the gospel truth. And then they become a part of our ministry, right? Our personal ministry. Our personal ministry would be that we saw the best spots in Minecraft, or whatever it is. And in your life, it'd be like nothing ever is going to be better than this person, because this person made such a huge impact on the universe, on the not the universe, in human life, right? Like in humanity, this person could be Einstein, could be whoever, right? Like we're like, oh, this person made the biggest impact, and we're gonna live our lives according to that person's teachings or belief system or whatever. And we make those things a part of our lives, and we wholeheartedly believe them, when in reality there is so much to life that you're missing out on if you just want to be in that, if you just want to live in that predictability. That predictability is absolutely comforting. It's comfortable to know that, like, if you don't lie, if you don't cheat, if you don't kill, if you don't like do all these things, that you're going to be rewarded with everything you've ever wanted after life. Which to me sounds silly, because like afterlife, what's the point of having gold, or what's the point of living in like a heaven sort of scenario? Like, what's the point? Like, you've already lived your life. You don't need all these pleasures, right? Like, what are you going to do with all these pleasures? Like, if you had all of the like money and sex, and like if you had all the food that you love, like you had all these pleasures in your life, what would be the point of life? There'd be no point. Like, what would be the point? Like, that's just the end. Like, these people would be crowding up, right? Or if you went, to the opposite end, right? You went to hell. Say you go to hell. Now you're going to just be burning forever. What's the point? What was the point? Because you decided to, I don't know, cheat on your wife or whatever. Now you deserve to go to hell forever. It's like, or because you never heard about like this person that you were supposed to pray to, but you never heard of them, and now you're in hell. Like, what's the point? So, sensationalism, right? People, in their heads, they believe things. It becomes reality for them. Oh, this is kind of cool. It becomes reality to them because, like, they're just like, oh, you know what? Like, this is, they just want a more predictable situation. A lot of people don't even want to critically think. That's what it means to not be woke. And the whole woke thing is kind of funny to me too. It's like, you're never asleep. You're actually awake. You're just choosing to ignore the world because you're scared of the unpredictability. Now, if you remember the last time I was talking about, in the last episode, we talked about how, like, if you had all these infinite lives, and the first couple lives, obviously you would go nuts. You would make heaven. You would have all the women and all the money and all the things and that you would, love to have in an experience of as a human. And then you switch over and you're like, you do all the sad stuff, right? You have all the tragedies and the craziness, and like you live as a poor person and people spit on you and everything like that, right? You live that kind of way. And then you go through and you live a life where you're like this, you kind of mix it up. And then eventually you get to a point where you're like, I'm just going to leave it up to I'm just going to leave it up to the universe. I'm just going to see what happens when I let go of the reins. Now you are in this life, and like, what's next? You don't know, because you decided to let go of the reins and just trust that like the universe was going to have your back. Or just trust that like whatever experience you have, whether it's good or bad, is going to be the one for you. If we are the universe experiencing ourselves, right? If that's the reality, because we're all energy. We're all energy that is going through an experience, regardless of what you believe. Like, that you are a ball of energy. You have, you have all this, like, you are a creature that is moving through this experience. And, there's a birth, there's a death, there's all that, right? So what's the point of living a life where you're in this predictable situation? Some people, they say they need it. I don't believe that. I used to believe that. I don't believe that anymore. I don't believe that we need this. I don't believe that, humans need to have predictability in their life. And I think like that's part of like the struggle that I've been having with my anxiety and stuff like that. And like, is that comfort, is just understanding that I don't need to always have comfort. Comfort is a luxury. And I've always believed that like you work for things in your life, like you work for that luxury. And it's just like if you take like martial arts classes or whatever, you learn how to defend yourself, self-defense classes. You now have an ability to protect yourself. You now deserve comfort because you created that for yourself. At one point I was afraid of dogs because I grew up, and the dogs that I remember growing up with, they would attack everyone. They would you would walk down the street, you see a group of dogs, you got to have a stick, you got to have rocks, you got to have stuff, because those dogs are going to chase you and they're going to try to bite you. Because I lived in a rural area. I didn't live in like a city when I was growing up. So I grew up like thinking that all dogs just bite. And I just thought like, they're just crazy. I'm like, it's just like I think about people, like I used to be scared of stuff like snakes too. Like I used to think like, oh, these snakes, they chase you when you're walking outside. Like these rattlesnakes, they're going to chase you. Or like these bees, they're out to just sting everybody. They're going to, and it's, bees especially, they're not trying to sting you, because when they sting you, they die, right? Like wasps are a different story. You learn things. You learn that like not all dogs are going to bite you. Right. And I like forced myself to go, I forced myself to go to, before I got a dog, I forced myself to go into into the pound, and I just sat, like, not even sit, but I stood like in the middle of all of the cages, and all of the dogs were barking at me. There was Chihuahuas, like German Shepherds, Pit Bulls, everything. All these dogs were barking, and I just remember shivering. And there were people walking around, the people just like saying like, hey, if you got any questions. And I'm standing there like trying to keep cool. And I'm just shaking. I'm like so scared. But like I just stood there and I was like, you know what? I want a dog. And I want to know what, I want to change my relationship and my perspective of, of dogs, of these creatures. And in order to do that, there's no way that I can have a dog and be afraid of it. Like, what's the point? So what I ended up doing was Like I did that several times. I would go and check out like the dogs, the chihuahuas and everything. And I would do that just to sort of desensitize myself. And it also, another experience that was similar to that, was like when I decided, someone asked me like, okay, so for me personally, I don't believe in like religion anymore. I don't count religion as something that is a part of my experience. It's not valuable to me anymore. But, I'm like, okay, so like, what did I find in religion that was beautiful to me? And I was like, I'll take some stuff from religion. I'm not going to take it, as face value, just suggestions. But I was thinking, what I loved about religion was the community. That was really what I really loved, was like the community of people always smiling, being positive. That to me was a beautiful experience. So how do I recreate that? Well, you can create hobbies. You can, there's a lot of ways that you can find people that are like-minded that don't involve, sacrificing your belief systems or sacrificing, your brain. There's like, you take things, you learn from these experiences, and you create your own ministry. You create your own belief systems. At least that's what I do. And the traumas, that I've had in my life, those have shaped a lot of my beliefs. And I'm learning to undo those traumas and change those belief systems, because they're not, a lot of them have not been good for me. Things like, I'll only be accepted if I work, if I work my ass off, and like, or if I work so hard in this life, then I will be able to finally like say, you know what, I did a good job. I deserve love. I deserve, all this kind of stuff, right? Like, because I did all this work, I deserve all this stuff. No, that's not the case. That to me was a belief that I had. That's not true. Hard work doesn't always like give you what you want. You could, like, for instance, making YouTube videos, real simple. You could go out there, you could like record hundreds and hundreds of games and get these clips that you think are just hilarious or entertaining, and you could take all these like clips from whatever game you're playing and you could put them into a montage. You could sync them up to music. You could find the perfect piece of music. Maybe you even create the music that you're syncing it up to, right? Like, you do all this work, like hundreds of hours. Well, maybe not hundreds of hours. You might maybe spend like 40-50 hours on this video, right? And you're like, oh, this is gonna be huge. Everyone's gonna love this. And you post it, and you might get to like 1,000, 2,000 views after like a couple months, and you're like, man, I really put my whole heart and soul into that thing, and like it just didn't do anything. It just didn't do well. And then you look on the front page and there's a video of a cat or a video of a guy like farting on a woman or something, like you're like, and it's not even good quality video, hasn't been edited, has no intro, outro, has nothing on it. It's just literally a video clip from somebody's phone. They did that thing. They might have even posted it live. They didn't even take the time to like put like any captions on it, any description. They didn't do nothing. And they have like, that video gets millions of views, like thousands of comments, right? Hard work. That's a belief that I thought I had in my head. The more you work, the more effort you put into something, the more valuable it'll be. No, that's not always the case. It's not always the case that if you're if you do good things throughout your whole life, that you're gonna live a good life. That's just not true. Everything is unpredictable. And for me, where I'm finding that I'm going to have to put some work in is that my anxiety is because I have such this like urge to control everything. I have this urge to control my life, to control so much, but I don't have control. I had this dream yesterday, actually. I took a nap yesterday. It was like, I took a long nap. Like, it was a 4-hour nap. It was around 1 o'clock. I had just, I had just finished just finished eating lunch. In the mornings I go walking and do all this stuff. So my mornings are always super busy. And then like around lunchtime, I work on stuff usually. But this time it was Sunday. So I'm like, I'm gonna take a nap, maybe an hour. So I'm taking a nap and then I wake up, or, in my dream, I have this dream that like, I'm in the middle of this giant field and it's like a greened, there's like grass and it's like above and you can see down into like valleys, right? There's like these valleys that are down below and there's like little, little like scattered homes and stuff like that. And there's a road that kind of comes up and I'm on top. And my house, it's like I have this like brick house that's sitting on top of that hill and there's a road going up and my car is parked on that road. And I'm looking down into the valley on like sort of the south or maybe on the west side. And I see like the sky is dark, like super dark. And like the town, I see like the people's homes are getting, it's like a giant storm. And the homes are getting like consumed by this darkness. And I look up into the sky and like where I'm at, the sky is like super bright. It's kind of sunny, it's not really like it is down there. And then I look to the east side, and the same thing. It's even darker actually. And I'm standing there and I'm just like, oh no, the storm's coming. And this guy comes out from I don't know where he came from. He's just like, this old man comes out and he's like, oh, don't you worry about those. Those are just storms. He's like, you'll be okay through them. You'll be okay. He's like, just embrace the rain. That's what he told me. Just embrace the rain. And I was looking at my home and my home was like lit up, like inside. It was like these warm colors. And I'm like, yep, I'm going to go inside soon because it's probably going to storm. But I caught myself, like I was standing by my car and I look up into the sky and I was just thinking about how big this storm is compared to me and how dark the storm is and how scary the storm looks and like how small I am. Like, am I going to get hit by something or is my home going to get, hit by a tornado or what is going to happen? This thing is scary. And just that anxiety, I felt like I was falling into the sky in the dream. And I'm like, oh no, but I knew I could see myself standing there, but I felt like I was just getting sucked into the sky. And then I woke up and I was like, what is going on? What just happened? And I realized that that's just basically my anxiety. Like, I'm on this like beautiful place. I'm in this beautiful experience, this human experience. And there's storms around me, sure. But they're not going to destroy me completely. it's just rain. It's just events that are going to happen, or maybe they've happened already, or they might not even happen. I might just be watching from, the sideline, and these storms are tearing everyone else up. Because I also had another dream like last week, where I was like in a similar situation where there was like a home, and there were wolves running around. These wolves were giant, like they had giant red eyes, and they were like attacking people, like people in my home, like back home. I was back home in like where my parents live, and it was dark outside. There was like all these dark clouds, and like thunder and tornadoes, and just circling my parents' home. But like I was untouched. I went untouched in that dream. I saw wolves run right past me and jump on people that, like people that I knew growing up. And I was trying to help them. I was trying to like tell them to get inside so they don't get attacked. But they wouldn't listen. They were just like, no, I got to do this. I got to get here. I got to go there. I got to, like one of my like old friends said, I got to get back to my grandma because she's all alone. And I'm like, okay, get there quick. And like I saw a wolf like just tear him to shreds. And I think about those things, and that is just anxiety. Like both those dreams just had to do with me and my fear of the unknown, fear of the darkness, fear of that, of not knowing the story. Sensationalism, it's a coping mechanism for avoiding the unknown. In my opinion, this experience is way more like strange and unique than than any of us will ever know. Like the universe just gets more and more, it's just expanding, so it's just getting more and more intricate, complex. We'll never really understand everything about the universe. There's so much out there. And we can't control it. It's its own thing. It's doing its own thing. And the only thing that, like I found that I'm going to, that the thing that gives me comfort is just knowing that the strongest thing in this universe is love. Love is going to drive everything because it's the most advanced, most complex energy. And that is a belief that I'm willing to sensationalize and love. And that is a belief system that I'm going to use as my driving force. That is part of my ministry because that's something that has been true in my life. And not only do I deserve this love, but it's also my job to give it. I love each and every one of you that watch these videos, even the ones that don't. I love making these videos. I love talking about these things. That's comforting to me. And I think that's okay.